All right, welcome to Summit Stories. Jonathan Musgrave at SEEP. I'm joined today with this handsome man from California. This is Brian Levy. Brian's the owner of BML Wealth Management and has done a bunch of campaigns with us. So Brian, thanks so much for joining us today. Super excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Yeah, you may not know this. I think Brian has done the most webinars of anybody that we've ever interviewed on Summit Stories. So he is the webinar pro.
I don't know about that, but...
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about that. Brian, before we get too far into it, I'd love just for everyone to get to know you a little bit. What sort of things do you enjoy doing outside of work?
Sure. Well, so I got 3 little ones at home. So that's probably my biggest, where my most amount of time is spent with the 3 young kids. They're all under 10, so 9, 7, and 3. So we got a house full. And that's where we spend our time. So, you know, it's funny. Everyone says, well, what's your hobby? I'm like, well, it's my kids. And so, definitely spend a lot of time on that. And, just being with the family, it's summertime. So they got lots of camp and golf and tennis and all that good stuff, drop off and pick up. So.
Does dad help teach golf or does dad watch golf?
No. I'm on the sidelines. So I would not be a good teacher.
Okay. So you get United sends you an email and they say, Brian, you get a free airline ticket and a trip for a whole week anywhere you want to go. Where do you want to go?
Man, that's we love if they'll go to Italy, I'd take that any day of the week.
Yeah, that's not a bad place. My wife and I had some family that lived over there for a while and visited a couple of times. So it's a cool place. So tell us a little bit about your practice, Brian. Like, how long have you been doing this? What does your staff look like?
Sure. Yeah. So I started, just to give you a background from the beginning. I won't make it too long, but I started working at In-N-Out Burger back in the day in high school. So that was my intro to hard work because it is physical labor over there. So I did that for 2 years, went off to college in Santa Barbara, and then started working for a sort of boutique retirement planning firm like ours is today. Worked there for many years until I had my first daughter, and then started our own practice, and we're located in Orange County, California. So and then kind of built our practice from there. I started out just insurance licensed for the first however number of years, realized I hit a plateau from a learning perspective, from a income producing perspective, got fully securities licensed, and then really started offering more comprehensive planning. And that's what we built ever since. There's 10 of us now at the company. And, I've really tried to focus on scaling properly, honoring our commitments to our existing clients and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you make that transition from insurance only to bringing on the security side of the business?
It was probably, I don't know what it was, 13 years ago.
Okay.
So a while ago.
Okay. Very cool. You brought up In-N-Out. Colorado has been an In-N-Out desert for as long as I've lived here. And they just built, I think 3 or 4, and one of them is about a half a mile from my house right over here. So
nice.
That's, I think the line has been around the whole block for the last 2 years.
Oh yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And honestly, I joke about it, but everyone talks about the franchise model and scaling like McDonald's. I always use the In-N-Out analogy, but really you could take a lot from having things perfected in systems. And who works there? A lot of high schoolers. And the reason why they're able to is because they have everything, systematized. And so it's very similar in our business, right? You want to make sure you have the systems and the workflows and all the things in place.
Well, I think what's interesting to me, and I was telling a friend about this the other day, but I was like, how is it that In-N-Out has this consistent experience no matter where it is you go? And, the first time I went to one was in San Diego, and then I've been to some in Phoenix before, but it doesn't matter where you go. Staff is so friendly. It just runs like a military clock.
Oh yeah.
Up.
The training is, they do a great job in that from the very beginning there. And there's a culture, all the things that most advisors downplay. And I used to downplay that I realized how important it is today. But the training and the culture is a kind of a big deal.
That's cool. It's cool to see even the little things in your past that can kind of influence how life goes in the future.
Oh yeah.
So we talked about doing a bunch of webinars. Prior to doing webinars, kind of what was like your primary marketing focus, and what is it that you continue to do with marketing?
Yeah. So one of the things that was our primary focus pre-COVID, if you will, and I think this was 2019? And then the beginning of 2020 was physical dinner seminars. So that, I did 60 seminars myself, which I almost killed myself doing. So we were hardcore focused on that. And the other thing that I've realized it's not, a lot of people are looking for that one thing, right? Whether it's seminar or webinar or the silver marketing bullet. And what I've realized, it's stacking all of them together. So when you add seminars plus webinars, plus referrals, plus professional relationships, plus radio, plus, when you start stacking them, it starts to all kind of work together. So even though seminars was our driving force, we tried to have other things kind of working in concert with the seminars.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think if you had a singular approach to marketing going into COVID, and if that marketing channel had anything to do that was disrupted by COVID, you probably had a pretty rough last year. So I think that the perspective today is not, what is the one thing you do for marketing? It's just, what are all the different things that you're doing? And when you start to have this consistent message, then you're right, those things really start to work in concert and in unison with each other. So, yeah. This is not intended to be a commercial for SEEP at all. It just so happens you do some work with us. But I'll be the first to admit that the first couple webinars we did together were, I would say, less than stellar. We went through a couple of changes. There was a period in 2020 where the state of California decided that they were going to change all the privacy, like how it is that we can interact with customers through advertising. And I think just about 30 or 60 days into starting to do webinars together, we had a really, really rough spot of performance, and show up rate wasn't great, attendance rate or registrations weren't great. One of the things I really respect and appreciate about you, Brian, is that you really had a stick-to-itive mentality to that, and it didn't throw in the towel, and we're working to constantly get better and better. I'm guessing that's things you do throughout other parts of your business, but what is it that's kind of giving this perspective to just really pursue and perfect marketing?
I mean, that just kind of goes back to the very beginning when I started marketing. Things aren't going to always work out. And so, when I started seminar, like for example, our very first seminar was at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which is a high-end steakhouse. And it was a complete bomb, right? I mean, we spent ridiculous amounts of money. Everyone's like, oh, that was a great presentation, and never even signed up to come in and talk to us. It was just a complete bomb. But everyone said seminars worked, everybody. And so I think a lot of us, and I think it's even just kind of human nature to kind of at that point be like, oh, I failed. I'm not doing that. It was costly. I'm going to stop. And if I would have done that, my business wouldn't be what it is today. So, we perfected our seminar. And then the next few was, our most, profitable seminars we ever did, even to this date. So, and it's just over time fine-tuned it and tweaked it. And so I've kind of kept that mentality. If I didn't do that with physical seminars, like I said, I wouldn't be where I'm at today in the company. And so as grueling as it was, as much as I was just starting a family, didn't want to waste money, and I was very much watching my pocketbook like anybody starting a business, I kind of take that same mentality and everything else, just like webinars. So when we started the webinars, I felt like we were bombing. And what I appreciate as well about you, Jonathan, is just we kept in constant communication. You don't get that a whole lot with a lot of companies in terms of talking to the owner and dealing with a lot of that. So that was helpful to me. And because you were willing to work through those issues, and I felt like we were taking baby steps each time, I was willing to continue that conversation and that process. So I know that no marketing firm is perfect. I know that no marketing is perfect, but I look at it as that I'm just basically testing and I'm kind of paying to figure it out. And so that's kind of what we've done. And, I think we've been doing the webinars together for over a year now. Mm-hmm. And they've worked out well. But again, it's just one piece of the marketing funnel. If I had my druthers, Would I pick, if someone said, well, would I do seminars or webinar? Well, I probably would do seminar, but I'm going to do both. And I think there's value and there's a difference between the two. And you're just maybe getting a different person. You may be just capturing someone who wouldn't go into a restaurant, or vice versa. Someone in the restaurant may not sit there behind a computer screen for an hour with a stranger. So, you're getting best of both worlds by doing multiple things.
Mm-hmm. I've got some numbers here. I think in 2020 did 19 webinars here through August. You've done 28 in 2021. So total of 47. Had a little bit over 4,400 people sign up for all those events. 1,700 of them attended. So I think when you look back over the course of a year and you think about like the impact that you've had and people that you've worked with as clients and even people that have just learned from that, it's pretty extraordinary. Now, one of the things we did differently with kind of the approach to marketing for you, Brian, is that rather than just confining it around your office, we began kind of reaching out and taking a bigger geographic look. So your office is there in Orange County, but we've kind of divided Southern California into 2 chunks and alternate between there every week. I'm interested to hear kind of how that changes when you're working with clients. What does that initial consultation look like? And, did you have any, I'm sure you did, some growth learning through even that appointment process that you came from?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely different, right? So you can't expect, I think one of the things that was a fault of mine and all of us is that we compare everything to physical seminars or something that we're already currently doing and saying, well, the numbers aren't as good, or it's more challenging, or whatever it is. So yes, you should compare it. But for me, it was a learning experience to figure out, hey, how do we get people to be more comfortable to do business over Zoom? What does that process look like? I found, Los Angeles and Orange County, where I'm at, no one really wants to necessarily drive because the 405 freeway is horrible, but they will. And we've found someone that's an hour away is still willing to drive in if it's important to them. And the ones that it's not, well, you're going to do business over Zoom. And the ones that don't want to do business with you at all, not going to. So, I mean, it's just, you're going to find the people that are willing to do business. And when we found out we can actually do business without physically being in front of them, that's when, Jonathan, we opened up the radius that we're capable of doing business with people, but also the fact that the numbers were better. We were getting Facebook was rewarding us for having a bigger audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really the interesting thing is that we've learned from a traffic standpoint is that when you give the algorithm more targets to shoot at, they can be more targeted in who it is they start displaying traffic to. And in turn, your cost per lead goes down, your reach goes up, everything is better. So I think the ability to kind of erase the boundaries we traditionally put around our businesses with something virtual like webinars is definitely an interesting thing.
Well, and I think the other thing, Jonathan, is, we do a pre-recorded webinar. So not having to physically every week or how often we're running it, put in that energy, talk about scalability and the ability to just, without putting more energy into something, be able to do that. I think that that's another thing that attracts me to the digital marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, signups is really good. People who show up to the webinar is even better. And that's continually been kind of a learning experience. I don't think if you'd asked me 2 years ago if we would be doing 200 webinars a month with clients across the country, I would say no. I wouldn't guess that somebody 55 and older who's planning for retirement would want to sit down in front of their computer for an hour and watch a presentation. But I think what happened with COVID is it kind of forced this adoption process. And now it's like, if you want to interact with people, you almost were forced into that. So I think it grew that adoption cycle, especially among our target demographic, pretty swiftly. I'm interested to hear throughout this appointment process, when you're working with people, do you find that people are open and I guess it's kind of case dependent, but do you feel like there's a general openness to communicate virtually? And, do you feel like kind of what happened was maybe a blessing in disguise with kind of being able to branch out a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to say what's going to happen long-term, right? I don't know if those habits are going to continue. And I think we saw that a few months ago to see habits are changing, right? I think time will tell, but I will say it forced us to fine tune our process. Because it is harder when you're not physically in front of somebody. So you have to make some adjustments to make sure that when you're working with them, that they're going to send you their financial statements, right? And set a date, when do you think you could send it to us by, right? So you have that where you can hold them accountable. It's very easy for someone to hop off a phone and not take action. So I think you have to change your process. Don't do the same thing you're doing for a dinner seminar or some other type of marketing. So you have to see what works for you. So I think that's important. And we'll see, what happens in terms of habits, because that's going to be the key indicator if someone's going to do webinars at a set date and time or on demand. I mean, all of this is still a learning experience, but I think the one thing I have learned is you have to adapt, right? You have to be able to make adjustments and kind of go where the trend is going.
Absolutely. One of the things that you do in your office does a great job at is keeping track of all the data along the way and knowing, what was our sign up rate and our attendance rate and our booking rate from one to the next. You and I had a few conversations early on about what is our appointment rate and how can we get that higher and higher. And I know that, we're constantly doing, essentially the same type of program from week to week. And I think now we're pretty much using like a dialed in recording, but were there things early on that you ended up changing to increase your set rate, your appointment set rate on that webinar?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that we had talked about, doing through your program is, number one, like you said, I think I need to take a step back because there's multiple layers to this. There's every week, let's say there's a group of people registering. And even though if those people don't watch, you're building your list, right? And we talk about the value of having a list that you can go back to and retarget or be in front of. I can't think of something more valuable than when the timing is right, that you're in their face. You're the person or the company they think of when they are ready to take action, or, hey, yeah, now I am ready to retire. So I don't want to downplay the people that don't watch, right? Because you could build a list working with you guys, but also in terms of, it's not going to move the needle immediately if you're not getting people to watch. And that's where we instituted things like confirmation calls and text messaging and things like that to interact a little bit more upfront. And, you would have the data more than I would, at least in front of me right now. But that's where we started to see things where we would see them. I only want to do stuff, especially if it's going to cost me money, if it's going to make somewhat of a material difference. And that's, some of the things that we've instituted. We just want to squeeze all the juice out of the lemon if we are going to spend energy and time doing something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some appointment rate numbers, 2020 versus 2021. I'm sorry, attendance rate numbers. It shows like 19.8% in 2020 and about 29.3%. And I think that newer rate includes, like, since we've started doing confirmation calls.
Yeah.
And that seems to make a difference. So I think,
it's a big percentage difference if you think about it.
It really is. It absolutely is. I mean, it's 10% here, but it could be almost like 30% comparatively. So,
right.
And those things aren't free, right? We've got to pay people to pick up the phone and call. But I think when we can prove to ourselves that, hey, this is making a difference, like you said, then it definitely does. Brian, has there been any families or specific clients that you've encountered through this process that kind of come to mind as like maybe a unique experience that you wouldn't have encountered if you weren't doing marketing and webinars the way that you are?
Well, for sure. The biggest thing is just location. So, when we deal with someone, I typically do not market in Los Angeles because we're down in Orange County. Like I said, it's kind of another world, but no, it is getting people in front of us in different counties, things that people typically would not be showing up to a dinner event or any event that we're doing. So you're getting in front of people. And like I said, just the multiple marketing sources is kind of the key, Just showing up in different places, being in front of people at the right time. Over time, you got to be patient, but it starts to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about kind of what your plans look like going forward. It sounds like this additive approach to marketing, as opposed to like focusing on one thing and getting rid of another thing, is really what your purpose and your goal is going forward. But do you see webinars playing a role in your marketing going forward? Like, let's just pretend we're 2 years from now and, you know, Corona isn't a thing and we're able to do exactly what we want from a marketing perspective. Is it something that you would want to continue doing, or is it something you feel like is kind of a point in time part of marketing?
No, I would want to continue doing it, but you know me, I'm going to analyze the numbers. So I want to make sure that it's still producing a positive ROI, and that it makes sense, right? So we're constantly going to analyze our relationships, our marketing, our what's working, what's not working. We'd be foolish not to. But as it stands right now, yes, I can see myself continue to do the kind of the multi-pronged approach, and having, you know, both of them running at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the themes I heard really early during the COVID lockdowns, like, you know, April, May, June last year, is that people were really focused on re-engaging their lists of like old and cold prospects. I think there's about 4,400 people total that have signed up to a webinar. Of course, we're looking at 19 to 29% attendance rate on here. But tell me some of the ways that you're re-engaging these people. What sort of strategies are you guys using internally to stay in touch with them and create opportunities for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have somebody in our office, which, you know, I'd consider business development, that immediately reaches out to the people that had registered, certainly the ones that booked a consultation with us, but also the people that didn't, but that watched. And then the remainder are put into what I would consider a nurturing type of email sequence that, you know, tries to engage them. And so we have kind of a 2-month, what I would consider kind of initial re-engagement process and retargeting process. And then we have our long-term nurturing that we put them on. So between all of those, we're trying to stay in front of them. And again, it just kind of goes back to, if I'm going to spend the money, we might as well try and maximize our ability to be in front of them.
Mm-hmm. What would you guess, Brian? I know you might not have a number right in front of you at this minute, but what would you guess is the breakdown of appointments that you're getting with people booking directly through the webinar versus ones that you're picking up through like nurturing and stuff after the fact?
You know, that's a tough question, only because our business development person, you know, came on. Actually, no, it's been a little while. now I probably should have those numbers, and I'm off the top of my head. But there's no question we're able to engage people just beyond the amount of appointments that's scheduled during the actual webinar. I mean, so there is a post follow-up acquisition that's happening. I don't have all those numbers, but let's put it this way, Jonathan, it's valuable enough to pay somebody to specifically be in that role.
Yeah, I agree. I don't believe for a second that people sign up for stuff and then don't intend to go, you know, whether it's seminar or webinar. At some point during that decision-making process, that person intended to do it, which means that they have a genuine interest in it and they probably have a problem that needs solved. So I think that the value, you know, it's easy to look at a list and say, these people didn't show up, like, you know, put them on my old and cold list and like, let's never talk to them again. But I think, you know, when you take a really human perspective at what it took for someone to see it and read it and fill out their personal information and register, like jump through a few hoops to get to that point, it only makes sense to really continue nurturing them from that point on.
Yeah. And in the past, you know, we didn't have somebody in that role. It was like our customer service associate that would also happen to, you know, reach out or confirm. So we really weren't taking advantage of that. And so it's kind of a luxury now that our business is a little bit more mature to have someone specifically in that type of role. And I think the biggest key is starting to develop a connection, just like all of us as human beings want, with people that watch or didn't watch or et cetera, because that's what's going to move the needle. If you just have someone doing confirm calls, that's not really connecting with that person. So when you have that, everything gets better, right? The show rate to the first visit gets better. The relationship from start to finish. Yeah, so it's been valuable to have somebody in that role.
I think, there's a bunch of marketers who say in order for someone to become your client, they have to know, like, and trust you. And I think whether it's seminars, webinars, radio, TV, the entire point is to expose yourself to people so they can get to know you, like you, and trust you. And I think that especially with digital, we try to find so many ways to automate everything. We want to automate our confirmations and our text and all that stuff. Yeah. And at a certain point, automation kind of becomes the enemy, because how is it that you can build rapport and get people to know, like, and trust you without having some sort of real communication with them? So, it is a revenue commitment to bring on staff and train them and dedicate that sort of resources to it. But at the same time, this is your end objective, is impact people. And you can't do that without having conversations.
Yeah. And I think, just recently, we've had a lot of people, this isn't specific to the steep webinars necessarily, but it goes with the same theme, which in the last month and a half, we've had a significant amount of people reach back out to us from events and things that we did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and now is just the right time. And if we didn't stay in front of them, if we didn't have somebody that's reaching out or them, constantly keeping in front of them, we wouldn't be that company that they thought of. And we know, we tend to try and attribute, okay, how do we acquire them as a client? Okay, it's only one thing. It came from seminars, but you don't think about the ancillary value that if someone hears you on the radio, but also gets your mailer, but then also sees you on TV and actually saw your promotion of a webinar, and then you retarget them and show up on their Yahoo Finance page. You don't really think how that makes an impact when they're saying, wow, these guys are everywhere. Maybe I should circle back with them. So there's a lot of value in that process, whether it's webinar related or not.
Mm-hmm. I think I've seen a stat that I'm kind of guessing at this, but I think it's something like 75% of people make financial changes as a result of something timely changing in their life. These life events that happen, grandpa passed away, got an inheritance, quit my job, whatever it might be. What are the life events that you're hearing right now? What's causing people to, I know it's all over the place, but what's causing someone to say, hey, Brian, I need to talk right now?
The two big ones, probably the biggest, as you probably know, are real estate transactions, right? A lot of people are selling the real estate. Markets are crazy right now. They're moving out of California because of the taxes, et cetera. Those are the big ones. Rental properties are selling. They're selling their primary. Those are the big events right now, moving out of state. And then, of course, kind of retirement, whether it's forced or they said, with all this going on, I was going to retire a couple of years from now, so I'll do it anyway. Those are the two big ones.
Okay, cool. We've got two questions I'd like to ask everybody. One's just for a little bit of advice you'd give maybe a younger version of yourself if you could go back in time.
Oh, boy.
And the other is a book. So I'll let you pick a book that you like that you would recommend to people. So I'll let you pick which one you want to answer first. Okay. Either a book you really like or
I'll pick the book because I just finished it.
Okay.
So, I'm just recently, I started listening to book on tapes while I was running. So I run for an hour every other day. So I realized, wow, I can finish a book within about 2 weeks. So I can really get a lot of good reading in when I have very little time. And the book that I read recently, which everybody who is a business owner, unless you don't have any employees, you should read, which is a leadership book by John Maxwell, The 21 Laws of Leadership. And it really goes into the difference between a manager, an entrepreneur, an owner, and a leader. And a manager isn't necessarily a leader. And frankly, an entrepreneur, they're good at finding ways to make money, cut expenses, increase profit. They're not necessarily great at leading. And it talks about not all of us have these as business owners or leaders have all 21 character traits. So you build a team around you that fills that gap. And it's so interesting. I learned so much because when you go as you know, Jonathan, when you go to school, you didn't realize you had to do sales, run the business, be a manager, also be a cheerleader, a leader, all these things that are so important. So when you hear these things and those 21 characteristics that, John Maxwell's kind of put together, it really was impactful for me. I don't know if I was just incited with the endorphins running, or it actually was a good book. Now, it was well written, and I think I'm going to try and live by those things. A lot of it is just being a really good person and pouring energy back into your team. But there's so much more. So I would definitely recommend for any viewer of this conversation to check that book out. And what was the other question? I forgot what the other one was.
Yeah, and we'll ask you here in a second, but one thing you said there that really hit me is that I think that so much of like old school developmental and coaching has been identify your weaknesses and try to build them. And I think what you said there that's really interesting is like find your strengths and really build a team around that to try to supplement what it is you maybe aren't so good at. Sometimes the things you're not good at least for me, are things that I don't want to be good at. And I need people around me to help me, but then that kind of frees me up to be even better at something else. So,
well, and it's the same concept. If anybody follows Dan Sullivan, he talks about kind of who, not how, right? Finding your who versus, the first instinct that we all have is, oh, how do I do this? Mm-hmm. And in reality, a lot of the stuff you're thinking about, how do I do it? You probably shouldn't be the one doing it. And it's not delegation, because delegation is more of, hey, I'm handing something I could maybe do better. No, you're going to find someone that can do it better than you, and they're going to be your who. So change it. It's a simple mindset shift, but that's a similar concept, is finding the right who, or finding the people around you that are going to add value that you can't, or that you're not good at or don't want to do. So yeah, great book. Highly recommend it.
All right. We got 2 for 1 on book recommendations. That's good.
There you go.
The other question is, if you had to give younger Brian, let's go back 10 years ago, and you say, hey man, here's some business advice that'll really help you. What is it that you wish you would have known then?
Man. That's such a tough one. You know how much stuff I've messed up and learned on. And, I would probably say that, when I was younger, starting the business, I would probably put more structure. I really wanted to be everybody's best friend versus being a great leader and a good business owner. And so I think that attributed to slower growth, a little bit more kind of loosey-goosey in terms of running the company. So, it's not an exciting one, but I think, to me, if I would have gotten that dialed in a little bit sooner, it would have allowed us to scale that much quicker. And, we scaled fast as it is, but I think once I started putting the right team members in place and having the mindset of, just building a proper structure and processes. And, as a advisor or salesperson, I used to downplay workflows and all the things that don't seem exciting.
Right.
But you got to put in the hard work up front, so it's easy later. So yeah, not a real exciting one, but definitely those, I definitely made mistakes by, trying to be everybody's friend versus really, being a leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's something that, as you're saying that, I'm chuckling, just thinking about The Office, like Michael Scott. I think you could, even in that kind of humorous format, you could see the struggle he went through between trying to run a business at the same time, like be everybody's friend. And the two don't always coexist. There's obviously an element to which camaraderie and team building.
Yeah, there's a balance, right? But yeah,
there's a hierarchy as well.
For sure. And, if you don't take care of the business first, then it's not going to take care of, the team and everybody else and the clients and all that good stuff. But yeah, there's just so much. And I would say earlier in my career, I would have found and partnered up and have been around people that are a lot better than me a lot quicker. Now I've learned I always want to be the dumbest guy in the room. And I want to constantly be around people that are better than me, that have already done it. Who was it? The owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They said, if you want to win a Super Bowl, find someone that's done it,
Yeah, exactly.
So,
right.
I mean, just be around people that have experienced it. And I would have probably done that sooner in my career, to be around coaches and mentors and guys that I look up to. So I probably would have done that sooner. which again would have attributed to maybe a quicker or an easier road.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to be the dumbest guy in the room, it's probably time for this conversation to be over.
I don't know about that.
But Brian, I've super appreciated you being on here and sharing your experience with us. I think whether you're a marketing business or a financial advisory business, as a business owner in general, it can be a little bit of a lonely experience because you're the only guy in your building who does what you do. I'm the only guy in my building who does what I do. And so I think learning from people, even outside of the industry, learning what it is that the challenges and the opportunities that you see aren't altogether that much different than what I'm experiencing. So it's awesome to hear that. I just super appreciate you being generous with your time and your advice here to everyone as well.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate your partnership, Jonathan, and appreciate you having me on. So
awesome. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Take care.